Ooh, what's going on, guys? It's Horse Beef here, and I'm bringing you another video. And today I'm gonna be creating my own pound for pound rankings because I was taking a look at the official UFC pound for pound rankings, and I wasn't really impressed with what I saw. I feel like some of the placements are a little bit off. So today I have set out on a mission to create a more accurate pound for pound rankings, and in the process, I know for a fact I will definitely piss off some people out here on the YouTube space. Disgruntled individuals will come about, and I'm okay with that. So let's just get into it, man, right away. Number 15, we have Merab Dvalishvili. Now, if you're wondering why, I do have a little screen there that's gonna, or a little text box that shows up that's going to kind of give you my reasoning a little bit, maybe like the bullet points for why exactly I think that these particular fighters should be ranked where they are. And when it comes to Merab Dvalishvili, 10-fight win streak, and he's coming off of a 3-fight win streak against Jose Aldo, Peter Yan, and Henry Cejudo, right? Those, in their own right, are elite victories, right? Back to back to back. You know, even this quote-unquote washed version of Jose Aldo at 135, he looked like a world beater before running into Merab. And yes, it was a boring-ass win, and I hated it, but it's still a win. And the Peter Yan victory was extremely dominant and brought tears to my eyes, and not in a good way. And the Henry Cejudo win, yeah, got rocked in the first and then came back and looked great in the second and third and just showed that gas tank that's so elite and completely able to be weaponized. And yeah, the way that he weaponizes it wouldn't even surprise me if he goes out there and just steamrolls Sean O'Malley at this point, man. So that's why I put Merab at number 15. And then we have number 14, who is Robert the Reaper Whittaker. Now, is he at his very, very best? I mean, based on the eye test, he might actually be. This might be the best version of Robert Whittaker that we've seen recently. Like his performance against Paulo Costa went to war with him. Like Paulo really only had the moment where he landed the spinning wheel kick at the end of the first. Otherwise, it was almost one-way traffic completely in Robert Whittaker's favor. And then that KO over Aliskerov to just remind everyone, holy shit, this dude is one of the most dangerous individuals in the world and still improving. And I personally take into account longevity when it comes to the pound-for-pound rankings. And with Robert Whittaker, he has shown extreme longevity and improvements even into his early to mid-30s here. He's looked like the best version of him that we've seen yet, and I have no doubt that he'll get that rematch against Dricus du Plessis and or Adesanya, depending on how their fight goes, and potentially getting that belt back before the end of his career. I can see it happening, and I think Robert Whittaker is more than deserving of being number 14 on this list. And then we have Jon Jones at number 13. Now, this is the one that I feel like will be the most controversial because there will be a lot of hardcore Jones fans in the comments, I'm sure, defending him and saying that he should be at least top 3, right? But the dude has won one fight or fought one single time. I don't care if he's technically undefeated throughout his career. I really don't care. He's holding up the heavyweight division. He's waiting around for a fight against an old Stipe Miocic. He's clearly cherry-picking his opponents, and he hasn't done enough recently because recency bias needs to come into play when you're talking about the pound-for-pound list. You can't hold up any sort of a top 5, even top 10 position on the pound-for-pound rankings if you're not fighting. If you fought one time in 4 years, why should you even be on the list in the first place? The only reason I put him on the list is because I couldn't think of anyone else who should replace him on the list in general. But I think like number 13 is the very best I could do. There was a point where I actually didn't have him on the list at all. But just considering his name value and the fact that he is, yes, he is champion, even if it is kind of a paper title, considering the fact that he's just refusing to fight anyone that makes sense, like Tom Aspinall being the biggest example. So Jon Jones, number 13, I think it's deserved. And then at number 12, we have the man that he has been ducking all this time, and Tom Aspinall. I was going to rank him a little bit higher on the list, but then I realized that despite how impressive he's looked throughout his UFC career so far, he did have that long layoff, and he doesn't have a super impressive resume of victories, but I think finishing Pavlovich Volkov and Tabora in the very first round and holding that interim title, I consider his title to be more legitimate than Jon Jones's, so that's why I decided to rank him one spot above. But his resume, as will be the case for some other fighters on this list, I do think that the one thing holding him back from being pushed up the list at all is just the fact that his resume needs some work, and I do think he will compile a more impressive resume as his career goes along, but as of right now, I just can't rank him much higher than 12. And at number 11, we have Sean Strickland. Now, this one is another one I can see being a bit controversial, having him this high up on the list, but I just think about his recent resume. Went to war with Dricus du Plessis. To some people, he arguably beat Dricus du Plessis, and like the only blemishes on his record are very, very close decisions against Cannonier, Dricus du Plessis, and a left hook knockout by Poatan, but of course that was always going to happen. But in between that, you have the extremely dominant victory over Israel Adesanya. You have the win over Imavov, which aged extremely well. You even have the knockout victory over Abu. The Brendan Allen victory, multiple fights ago, aged beautifully as well. And then you have that somehow split decision victory over Paulo Costa, which I thought was unanimous. It was completely dominant on Sean Strickland's point. I don't know how any judge could score more than a round to Paulo Costa. It made absolutely no sense. So Sean Strickland, I think, has been very unlucky. I mean, of course, he did get the right end of the split decision, but it should have never been split to begin with. But he's also been on the wrong end of split decisions against guys like Dricus du Plessis and Jared Cannonier, which would be incredible wins to have on the record. And if he had those on the record and was still holding the title, he would arguably be probably in the top 5 pound for pound at this current moment. And then we have Israel Adesanya. Did I say it correctly, guys? Adesanya? I think that's how you say it. Whatever, I don't really give a shit. Adesanya. Israel Adesanya. Not a big fan of the guy personally, as I've said in past videos, and I know a lot of people do agree with me. I know, and also based off of comments, I know a lot of people do disagree with me as well, because clearly, despite touching his dog inappropriately, the man still has a pretty large fan base. But I do have to be respectful to him and put him at number 10, because despite losing 2 of his last 3 fights, he does have one of the best resumes that any middleweight has ever put together. Impressive wins over Robert Whittaker. Yeah, the second one, maybe a little bit fortunate to have that. And we do have to focus on the tangibles. So even though he does have some victories that are a bit questionable, some decision wins that could have gone really either way when you think about it, he still does have a great resume and is fighting for the title against Dricus. So if he is to dethrone Dricus, then I can definitely see Israel Adesanya being pushed up back into the top 5 of these pound for pound rankings. And then we have Alexander Volkanovski, one of the greatest of all time, one of my favorites of all time, and it's unfortunate that he has had a pretty rough string of losses in his recent fights. It's actually a more violent run of losses than even Israel Adesanya has faced, because he was just knocked out brutally 2 times in a row by Topuria and Islam before losing a very close split decision to Islam, which realistically, from based on what I remember from the fight, could have gone either way. So that fight in and of itself raised Volk's stock. So a lot of people don't even consider that to be a loss, because he kept his pound for pound number 1 spot even after that loss, and only lost the number 1 pound for pound spot after getting knocked out by Islam after taking that fight on short notice. So I feel like he's had a very unfortunate run, and I feel like he's just been too eager, and it's gone against him recently. But when you look at his overall career and even what he did in between those losses, right, the dominant victory over Yair Rodriguez, I still do think that Volkanovski has more to give and is one of the best in the world and one of the greatest of all time. So for me, very much deserving of that number 9 spot. And then we have Ilia El Matador Topuria. Now, another fighter that I consider to be one of the best in the world, but only really based off the eye test, because the only reason why he doesn't climb a little bit higher on this list is because he's, I don't want to say untested, because he just knocked out one of the greatest of all time, right? So that is something to write home about there. But before that, it was Bryce Mitchell via finish, and of course, one of the most one-sided, dominant 5-round performances in history against Josh Emmett. But I don't think anybody would really consider Josh Emmett to be the top of the elite. Of course he's elite because he's been a ranked fighter at 145 for a long time now. So of course he's going to be elite based off that alone. But other than those 3 victories, which are impressive, still I feel like Ilia Topuria hasn't staked his claim to the extent where maybe he would think that he has. So I do think that he has more impressive victories to compile before we move him up this list. But I just think that knockout victory against Volk is enough to put him at that number 8 spot. But still, there is more for him to prove later on and as he continues to go on in his career. And then at number 7, we have the UFC Golden Boy in Sean O'Malley. Now, I don't think he's really deserving of being in that top 5. I think in the official pound-for-pound rankings, he is in the top 5. I just don't think he's beaten enough individuals. Of course, when he KO'd Aljamain Sterling, it solidified that, yes, he is that good, right? To find that shot against such a dominant champion, right? Like, no one else was able to find that shot on Aljo during his entire run as a champion. Although I think that Aljamain Sterling's overall title run was very fortunate, right, when you consider the circumstances, some of the close decisions that happened to go his way and all that. So I do prefer having Sean O'Malley as a champion, even though I'm not a huge fan of him as a person. But when you really do look at his resume, Nothing to write home about up until you get into the robbery over Peter Yan, but that's neither here nor there. Of course, as I said before, we have to base this off of the tangibles, and the tangible fact is he beat Peter Yan. On paper, he has a win over Peter Yan. Of course, Marlon Vera shouldn't have even really had that title shot to begin with. It should have been someone like Corey Sandhagen, in my personal opinion, so you would expect him to beat up Vera like that. But yeah, to KO Aljo the way he did, it's very impressive, and I would say that he's deserving of being a number 7. Arguably, he should be pushed down, but I put him right above Ilia Topuria because I just feel like his resume is just a little bit better. And then at number 6, we have Alexander Pantoja. Potentially controversial, but I don't see why it would be, because the man is on a 6-fight win streak against Manel Kape, Moreno, Royval 2 times, Alex Perez, which has aged pretty well in recent memory, and also Steve Erceg, who proved to be very, very elite. And of course, that decision was very controversial, but as I've said throughout this list, it's all about the tangibles, right? And that is an extremely impressive string of victories at flyweight. His recent form has been great. He's put on some very entertaining fights, despite what a lot of fans might think about him being a lay and pray fighter. I don't see him that way. I actually think that all of his fights in recent memory have been extremely entertaining because of his style, right? That forward marauding style, and it's worked for him thus far. Although I can definitely see him being finished at some point in the near future because of that style and relying on his chin a little bit. And like, even though skill for skill, I don't think that he is a pound for pound number 6 fighter. You do have to look at the resume of wins and the title defenses that he's put up, and there's really no question that he deserves to be number 6. And then at number 5, we have Max Blessed Holloway. Now, this might be a little bit too high of a placement for him, I do realize, because he's not holding a belt currently. I guess he is holding the BMF belt, right? I didn't even include that on the list of accolades, because to me, it's just sort of a nothing burger. Like, I don't really care too much about a BMF title, even though he did beat such an elite guy and in such a dominant way in Justin Gaethje. But when you look at that resume I listed, he has one of the greatest resumes in UFC history, 100%. And longevity, as I've said, makes a huge difference for me. And I think Max Holloway has only looked better in recent fights, similarly to a guy like Robert Whittaker. And I think it props up the past wins, right? Because when you look at someone like John Jones, I ranked him so low because even though he was amazing at one point, right? Beating all comers, essentially went through like 3 generations of fighters, or 2 generations of fighters at the very least. But at the same time, when you only win 1 fight in 4 years, your past achievements no longer matter. But I think when you couple Max Holloway's recent achievements with his past achievements, right, he's essentially cleaned out the 145-pound division like 2 times at this point, and now knocked out Gaethje at 155 and looked incredible. For me, Max Holloway is one of the best in the world and one of the best to ever do it, and he is 100% deserving of that number 5 spot. Then at number 4, we have Dricus du Plessis. Now, this one I can see being pretty controversial as well, but for me personally, I was even thinking about putting him at number 3, but then I realized that it didn't actually make a whole lot of sense. But the man's on a 9-fight win streak, and I would say, yeah, the Brunson and Till finishes are good to have on the resume, but the real meat and potatoes are the fact that he beat Strickland and finished Whittaker, right? So 2 fighters that are on my personal pound-for-pound list. So to have wins over those guys, and if he does go out there and beat Izzy, then for me, he's easily top 3 pound-for-pound. But as of right now, man, Dricus du Plessis looks like one of those fighters that I can see holding onto the belt for a long time. I'm picking him personally against Izzy, at least as things stand. I do reserve the right to change my mind. But right now, I pick him against Izzy because Dricus, especially with his improved cardiovascular system, with the whatever issue with his nose that he had that has now been fixed, whatever it was, I don't even know like the details of it, but he looks like a different animal now, and it really went to war with Strickland for 5 rounds and matched his pace and looked even fresher than he did in the 5th round. The guy's a complete animal. I don't care what you say about him. Like, say what you want about him as a person, his personal life, whatever, how he kisses his coach, all that shit, whatever. As a fighter, the man is a machine, and he's really staking some legacy for himself. And at number 3, we have Leon Edwards. I believe he's deserving of the spot, even if I think he is one of the most boring fighters of all time. I really do not enjoy watching Leon Edwards fight, but he is on a 12-fight win streak, as he will never fail to remind us. He's defended the title twice. He does have a pretty good resume with 2 wins over Usman, a win over Colby, RDA, Luque, which I guess hasn't aged incredibly well, but still at that time Luque was a beast. Cerrone, and then Nate Diaz, which, you know, it's arguable whether that's a good win or not. But despite that, I still find him to be a little bit overrated, but when you do look at the title defenses, the win streak, the technique, all that, he is a great fighter. He is a very, very good fighter, and as things stand, there really is no reason to put him anywhere lower than number 3, considering Usman was recently number 1 pound for pound ranked. So considering that, Leon Edwards at number 3, I think it makes all the sense in the world, but goddamn, he bores me to tears. And then at number 2, we have Poatan, which is very much in line with the official UFC pound for pound rankings. He did just overtake that number 2 spot, and I think it's completely deserved. You look at his wins that he's picked up, and the KO win over Izzy Strickland, which aged beautifully. Like, probably one of the best wins in terms of aging well, right? Because since then, Strickland has went on an absolute tear and ended up dominating Izzy and beating some serious competition and putting up incredible fights with some serious guys, right? So that win, I think, aged incredibly well. And then 2 finishes over Yuri Prochazka, knocked out Hill, and beat Jan Blachowicz. That's one of the craziest resumes, especially for the short time that he's actually been in the UFC. To pick up those wins with the amount of fights that he's had in the UFC, it's crazy to me. And he's seriously making a claim for himself to be the GOAT at some point if he picks up a few good legacy wins going forward in his career. Poatan number 2, and I have no doubt that in due time he'll take that number 1 spot. And if he goes up and he captures that heavyweight title, not only is he pound for pound number 1, but he might even be the GOAT at that point. And at number 1, we have probably the most self-explanatory placement on here, and also same thing with Poatan, very much in line with the UFC's official pound for pound rankings, right? Islam Makhachev, he is pound for pound number 1. The man is on a 14-fight win streak. He's currently champion with 3 title defenses. Finished Poirier, finished Volk once. Of course, the first fight was quite close and controversial for some, but as I keep saying with the tangibles, he did get that win over Volk. Great fight that was. Finished Charles the Bronx Oliveira, beat Arman Tsarukyan. Yes, it was back in the day, but they were both kind of early on in their career, so they were on an even playing field in that sense. Beat Bobby Green by finish. Also finished Drew Dober as well, which, yeah, maybe that's not a great legacy win, but I love Drew Dober. So for me, that's a pretty good win right there. But although at the same time, when you look at his resume, I feel like he does need to put some more wins together and beat some more decent names and some top competition that fight at 155, because, yeah, those 2 wins over Volk are great, but at the same time, he is a 145er naturally. So I would like to see him compile more dominant victories over 155ers, and just based off of what I've seen of Islam Makhachev's elite skill set, I have no doubt in my mind that he'll not only continue to dominate 155, but will even go up to 170. And I think it's very, very possible for him to go and become double champ with the skill set that he does have. So Islam Makhachev, number 1. There's no arguments, I don't think, from any of us. Maybe you can swap him and Poatan back and forth, but there really is no argument for either of them to be below number 1 or 2. And that is my top 15 pound for pound list. Let me know in the comments section below if you agree, you disagree, with which placements you disagree or do agree with. Just let me know any thoughts you have on the video. And of course, as always, if you think I'm a casual, you need to let me know in the comment section below, because I do love to read those comments. And other than that, guys, I do appreciate you watching. This will be my last video for about a week, because I am going on vacation for a week, an all-inclusive stay. So yeah, it should be a fun time, wind down, relax a little bit, and then come back recharged, excited to make more videos, because I do look forward to making more videos for you guys going forward. Let me know any ideas that you have, if you do have any sort of topic in particular you'd like me to cover, and if you enjoyed this particular idea and you want me to explore similar topics going forward, then let me know in the comment section below. And thank you guys for watching as always, and I'll see you on the next one.